Come all you poor workers, good news to you I'll tell, how the good old Union has come in here to dwell.
A battle in the heart of Alabama caught our attention. Coal miners in one community, they've been on strike now for months.
Working as long as 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, in some of the most dangerous conditions.
I really think that the labor movement is the single greatest force for democracy in the history of the United States.
The story of Alabama is a story of not just resilience, but of militancy.
I say no contract, you say no code. No contract, no contract.
If we ain't all free, ain't none of us free.
You're listening to Alabama's only union talk radio show, The Valley Labor Report, with Adam Keller and Jacob Morrison.
Hello, Tennessee Valley. This is The Valley Labor Report. My name is Jacob Morrison. My co-host and fellow agitator is Adam Keller, but he's in Houston, Texas today. So Ben Jove is here sitting in for Adam.
All right.
We are broadcasting live online and on the radio from the heart of the Tennessee Valley, the Spice Radio Studio in Huntsville, Alabama. Today, Tommy Tuberville, the $1 million quitter, says you are lazy. Hyundai is running from responsibility. The AEA's elections are coming up. All that and more on today's program. If you want to be part of the show today, we've got a phone number and the line is open. You can call or text 844-899-TVLR. That is 844-899-8857. You can also leave us a voicemail or shoot us a text all throughout the week, any time of day or night. If you haven't gotten enough of us by the time that we wrap here on the radio, or if you just want to see what we're up to throughout the week, then you should follow us online. We're anywhere you find anything online, all at The Valley Labor Report. Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, TikTok. All of that at The Valley Labor Report. Wherever you get your podcasts, The Valley Labor Report. Just a reminder, your support helps us stay on the air. Our largest single source of funding comes directly from our listeners. So if you want to become a sustaining member of the program, make a one-time donation, or buy our hat, you can go to our website, tvlr.fm, tvlr.fm/store, tvlr.fm/donate, or you can become a patron at patreon.com/The Valley Labor Report. If you're a member of a union, then maybe get your local to sponsor the show. You can reach out to me for more details on that. I am more than happy to make appearances at general membership meetings and answer questions from the membership about the program and about anything, just anything at all. They can have questions about sponsoring the show. Happy to come and chat. So we're going to go ahead and jump into Last Week in Southern Labor. Last Week in Southern Labor is a segment that we do every week, mostly, where we tell you what happened in the labor movement in the South. We pull the information from Jonah Furman's newsletter, Who Gets the Bird, which compiles all of this information for the entire United States. So if you want to see what's going on outside of the South, then subscribe to that newsletter at whogetsthebird.substack.com. And with that, let's jump into new organizing for the week of October 15th through the 22nd. 63 workers at whiskey maker Woodford Reserve in Versailles, Kentucky are unionizing with Teamsters Local 651. 10 helicopter mechanics at Fort Hood, Texas are joining the machinists. 14 digital optimization team workers for news giant Gannett in Louisville, Kentucky are joining the Indianapolis News Guild. Workers who produce TV commercials have won a neutrality agreement through IATSE with the Employers Association. They'll still have to win an election to win a union, but agreeing on some ground rules is a very important part of that process. In wins and losses, in Charlotte, North Carolina, 61 drivers for U.S. Foods voted 28-24 to join the Teamsters. 39 workers at 2 more shops, including one in Denison, Texas, voted to join Starbucks Workers United, 24-7 all told. 17 workers for Maytag Aircraft in Fort Worth, Texas, voted unanimously, 10-0, to join the Machinists. 30 workers at a Starbucks in Nichols Hill, Oklahoma, which is kind of on the boundary, but this is such an important story that I figured I'd include it in the roundup. They have apparently filed to decertify the union there, Starbucks Workers United. And that is a store which was only officially organized in May. Now, decertification votes are not valid within the first year. You can't decertify your union until a year after you win the union. You have to wait at least that long before you can vote to decertify. And it's the same thing if you lose an election. If you have a union election and then you lose the election, you can't try to get another vote until at least a year later. Same thing if you win a union. You have to wait until a year. And so with that being the case, and the amount of open, unfair labor practices, both at that store in particular and nationally, means that this petition is almost certainly going to be thrown out. But it's a sign of what's to come at stores across the country as the employer continues its scorched earth campaign at Starbucks. In strikes and bargaining, Starbucks workers sue management in Anderson, South Carolina for defamation for filing a false police report accusing them, let's remember, of kidnapping and assault. Kidnapping and assault for talking to the manager.
Very scary stuff. Very scary.
Insane. So Starbucks workers are suing management at that location, and good for them. Hope they get some money out of that. In Alabama, the West Rock paper mill lockout of about 500 steelworker members continues, and the Working People podcast has the story from me. I went down to the picket line and interviewed five workers who are locked out from the picket line. You can actually hear cars driving past us as we do the interview. So go to the Working People podcast feed and you can check out those interviews. Further south, several hundred longshoremen with ILA, the International Longshore Association, Local 1410 in Mobile, Alabama, were set to strike but had a last-minute deal through federal mediation that has, for now, postponed the action, per The Guardian's Michael Sonato. Transit workers with the Amalgamated Transit Union Local 1447 in Louisville have authorized a potentially illegal strike by 95% as they push for a 3-year contract with 21% raises. So here's to them. In politics and legislation, we had one update. The Prince William County, Virginia School District has become the latest Virginia jurisdiction to pass a collective bargaining ordinance. But union activists are decrying it as weak, both in terms of holding formal elections and in the actual bargaining that it allows for. In internal union politics, UAW members are officially voting in the first ever direct elections for national officers in the union. It's very unclear how many members are going to vote. In last year's referendum that led to this election, remember there was a referendum before on whether to vote, right? They had a vote on whether they were going to vote on the top officers. And that turnout was only 14%. So, and because the Constitutional Convention rejected ranked choice voting, there are likely to be runoffs in 2023 for at least the top spot, the international president, where 5 candidates are running. The incumbent Ray Curry, the Members United Reform challenger Sean Fain, the very active on Facebook Brian Keller, the World Socialist website candidate Will Lehman, and UAW Local 163 leader Mark Gibby Gibson are challenging. They're all vying for that one spot. And there's probably going to be at least a runoff for the vice president position as well, where 8 candidates are vying for 3 spots. In Region 9A, where UAW Members United candidate Brandon Mansilla is going up against incumbent Administration Caucus candidate Beverly Brakeman, some members are not receiving ballots. Not great. The 65,000 members of the Airline Pilots Association have a new president after a contested election. As part of the extended fallout from the ongoing contentious rail negotiations, Reese Murtaugh, a local chairman out of Machinists Local Lodge 696 out of Richmond, Virginia, is planning to challenge incumbent Kyle Luce for the presidency of Machinists District Lodge 19, which is the 6,000-member district of rail machinists, around 4,000 of whom work on freight railroads covered under the ongoing negotiations. Hamilton Nolan has another great column over at In These Times, this time on the UFCW International's mealy-mouthed response to the proposed Kroger-Albertsons merger and that union's general weakness. At 1.2 million members, Hamilton makes the point in his article, at 1.2 million members, the UFCW really should be, really has the ability, it seems like, to be leading the labor movement in more ways than it is, and it just does not seem to be the case. So Tommy Tuberville is the U.S. Senator from the state of Alabama, and that is a position that he got only by virtue of having been a well-known head coach at Auburn University, right? I mean, we already, I think that even people that voted for him would understand that, and I don't think that's a very controversial opinion, right? That he won because he was a popular football guy. That's it. And Auburn University is, let's remember, a public institution, and so its employees, including the head coaches, they are state employees. They are state government employees. That means their salaries are paid by us, the community, the citizens, the taxpayer of Alabama. That's a position, head coach at Auburn, for which he was paid tens of millions of dollars by the people of Alabama, and for which he was paid $5 million by the people of Alabama to quit. He resigned with 3 years left to go in his contract and got $5 million. The people of Alabama paid Tommy Tuberville $5 million to quit.
Beautiful system.
Yeah. I think that's an important preface to this recent story about Tommy Tuberville. Ben, how much do you think that you would get in a severance package from your job if you went in tomorrow and handed him your letter of resignation? I know it's probably not going to be $5 million, but I mean, do you think you could at least get like $1 million from him? Or
I feel like I would get a really good Arby's coupon.
Oh, and
yeah,
that's not nothing. That's not
a lanyard, perhaps, perhaps a lanyard.
Yeah, I mean, so that's the severance packages that normal people get, right? That working people get, but of course. Special people like Tommy Tuberville get $5 million from the state of Alabama to quit. Well, Tommy Tuberville, the $5 million quitter, is, like I said, the U.S. Senator for the state of Alabama. That is also a position where he's getting, he is really, really raking in the government money. He is really suckling on the government teat, Tommy Tuberville. That is a position for which he is also paid by the people of this country, ostensibly for, representing us. While in this position, he has been a prolific stock trader. Of the literal millions of dollars he has traded while in Congress, again, supposedly this guy is like working for us, right? Supposedly he's supposed to be working for us. He's supposed to be representing us, but he's been able to trade millions of dollars worth of stock. Of the millions of dollars he has traded while in Congress, he has violated the Stock Act and refused to file more than 130 transactions on time. Transactions worth between $900,000 and $3.5 million. So between $1 million and $3.5 million, and that is just the trades that he has violated the law on, the extremely lenient law. And of course, Alabama stock trader on the Hill is opposed to banning stocks. He's opposed to banning stock trading. He says he reckons it would severely limit the number of folks willing to serve in Congress. Tommy Tuberville reckons it would severely limit the number of folks willing to serve in Congress if they were not allowed to make money by having money.
If it's not enough millions, is what you're saying.
Yes, exactly.
They're just some millions, but not enough millions.
Yeah. If you're not able to just sit on your pile of cash and have more cash come to you by virtue of that, then that would really dissuade people from serving. And look, I understand that one of the stations that we're on is a conservative radio station, and I understand that a lot of people in that audience will have voted for Tommy Tuberville. But does that not, does hearing that not make you question his commitment to the people of Alabama? Does that not just make you think for a second about I wonder if this guy is really in there to represent me, or if he's in there to get some stock tips? I think that most people under the sound of my voice on, the more liberal talk stations that we're on and the more conservative talk stations that we're on, I think everybody could agree that if that is the case, if it is the case that banning stock trading while in Congress would actually limit the number of people willing to serve, I think that most people would agree that's a good thing. Because I do not want people representing me in Congress that would not represent me in Congress if they couldn't make millions of dollars while they were there. I don't want that to be the motivation for them going to D.C.
And it's just more anti-worker motivation, too. It's
Yeah.
just when they're worried about these people who own stocks, shareholders and stuff, they're definitely not, what's best for the rank and file? They're how can we exploit our resources, including our friends and family, which are their resources.
Exactly. I mean, I don't think that's a controversial opinion. If there are people that would say, no thanks, I'm not going to go to Congress because I can't trade stocks, then good. We don't want you in Congress.
I just want a little insider trading with my political power.
Right. So our $1 million quitter who basically said that he wouldn't want to be in Congress if he couldn't trade stocks. I mean, that's more or less what he said. This week, he's in the news saying this. What's happening in our country right now, we're getting too many takers in our country. Too many people to take a check and they don't want to give back. They don't want to go to work. We've got Generation X and these millennials we've got to get Generation X and these millennials to understand that you have to tote your own load. You got to tote your own load. And, lest you think that Tuberville has some weird axe to grind with Gen Xers, a spokesman for his office clarified that the group of Americans he meant to attack was Gen Z, not Gen X. He wanted to make that clear, wanted to clear up any confusion. 45 to 65-year-olds, he's totally fine with. If you're under 25, he hates you, is basically that. He also elaborated with Way 31 and said, quote, we're getting too many takers in our country. They'd rather take a government check, which is literally what he did.
He's a professional. He's one of the best. One of the best.
That's all he's ever done is take a government check.
Publicly funded.
Oh my
jobs
gosh!
you could get, I'm sure.
I mean, this guy, all he's ever done. Did he ever do anything before he was a coach? I don't know. All he's ever done is take a government check. All he's ever done is take a government check. And now, look, like, if we want to be charitable, and who knows, maybe this is the case, right? After all the people that he'd be palling around with in D.C., and in Montgomery at all these fancy fundraisers that you and I are never going to go to, right? All the people that he'd be palling around with in his day-to-day life as a multi-millionaire, right? Maybe he's talking about the children of the rich kids that he sees that just coast on their parents' wealth. I've seen people like that. I've seen people that, the wealth of their family has just totally destroyed them, right?
Yeah, all those stocks have to go somewhere.
Right,
so it's
right,
like the
right.
circle of life.
Maybe he's talking about the CEOs who are making 1,000 times what their median employee makes. Maybe that's what he's talking about. I could get behind that. I could get behind the idea that we've got too many takers in our country, and they're the bosses, right? We do have too many takers in our country, and they're the bosses and executives and CEOs. That's who the takers in this country are. That's who the takers are. But of course, that's not who he's talking about, right? And we know that. That's not who he's talking about. He is trying to bring forward, for the people listening to him, he's trying to bring forward this idea of some lazy young person who just refuses to work or contribute to our society. I tell you what, as a young person, I cannot bring to mind a single person. I don't know a single person that either does not have a job or is in college full time. I can't think of anybody that would match that description offhand. And I think I think that's the case for most people. I mean, Ben, how many people do you know that's just sitting on their couch, for no reason, totally able-bodied, and are just skating by on government checks?
Can't think of any.
Can't think of any. Yeah. I mean, I can't think of any. And he's going with this attack despite the fact that the labor force participation rate among working age folks, working age defined as 25 to 54 by the Bureau of Labor Statistics, is up 20 points over the last 70 years. We have 20% more working age people working today than in 1950. Of working age people, of people aged 25 to 54, 20% more of those people are working today than in 1950. We're at the same labor force participation rate that we were before the pandemic started. And Tuberville, who I cannot mention him without reminding you, got millions of dollars to quit. He is scolding us for not working enough. But maybe, I don't know, maybe let's dig into the data a little bit more. Maybe if we get a little bit more granular, maybe we can see, maybe that's going to reveal something. If we dig a little bit deeper into the data, if we look at 16 to 19-year-olds, 20 years ago, in 2001, about 50% of them had a job. Today, it's 36%. Now, there's a significant decrease in high school-aged children working today. Yeah, okay. You got me there, but I will say that I don't think it's bad that fewer high school-aged children are working. I think that is actually very good for society that less high school-aged children are having to work, okay? So let's go up another age bracket. Let's go 20 to 24. 20 to 24. 20 years ago, we had 77% of 20 to 24-year-olds had a job. Now it's 71%. So we see that the decline in the labor force participation rate among this age group is much, 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 much less than the high school age children, right? It's pretty similar, 77% to 71%. It's a little bit of a drop, but, I think that this can pretty easily be chalked up to more people going to college than 20 years ago. I think that's a pretty easy explanation. And again, I think that's good. I think it's good that more people are getting more education. I think that's good for society. When we get to ages where folks are really going to be out in the workforce, like when we get to 25 to 34, right? These are really, almost everybody's going to be out of college at this point, and we're going to be, this is my age demographic, 25 to 34. We're going to be in the workforce, right? The labor force participation rate among 25 to 34-year-olds is almost identical. Almost identical. It was 84% 20 years ago. It's 82% now, but it was actually lower than it is now in 2011. It was 81.5% in 2011. And so actually, there are more young people working than there were 10 years ago. Among 35 to 44-year-olds, same thing. We went from 84% to 82%. So this idea that he's putting out there, that there's just this horde of young people that are just stealing from the hard-working olds, it's absurd. It's absurd. It is not based in reality. He's trying to gin up generational divisions, stir up resentment, divide us up so that we don't see who the real takers are, and that's the bosses. That's the big bosses, the executives, the people in New York and D.C. These are the takers. But he wants you to reckon it's your grandson or your granddaughter. Because while more people are working than ever, which is a fact, more people are working than ever. More working age people are working than ever. Our wages are stagnant. We're taking pay cuts during this inflationary period that is largely being caused by price gouging. You don't believe me? I mean, just look at the numbers. It has been shown that more than 50%, the majority of the increase in prices has gone to what? Maybe increased wages for those greedy quiet quitters? Maybe it was increased capital investment, or maybe it was increase in cost due to supply chain issues. No, and no. More than 50% of the increase in prices during this inflationary period, during the last year or so, has gone directly to increased profit. Not to higher wages, not to capital investment, nothing. Just increased profit. Just literally the people that own taking from the people that don't. That's where all this money is going. It's going to bank accounts of people that have more money than they know what to do with. And here in Alabama, I mean, we see it all across the state. Paper mill workers were locked out a few weeks ago because this big international corporation wants them to take what amounts to a 10% wage cut. This big international corporation wants them to give up their protections against overwork, while their CEO got a 300% raise. The CEO to median worker pay ratio at Amazon is 6,474 to 1. Ooh. For every dollar that an Amazon worker makes, Jeff Bezos makes 6,474. In the 50s, the average CEO to worker pay ratio was 25 to 1, which 25 to 1 is still sounds like a lot. If you just think about 25 times more than somebody, you are making, it's not like, okay, I'm making 80,000 and my boss is making 300,000. That's something on the order of what, 3 or 4 times? And that still sounds like a pretty big divide, right? That still sounds like, we're talking in the 50s, it was 25 to 1. 25 times The average CEO made 25 times what their median worker made. I think that sounds like a lot. Now, it's something like 300 something to 1. 300 something to 1 on average. So, I mean, it's clear. It could not be more clear who the takers are. It's the people at the top. It's bosses, it's politicians, it's the executives, it's the people donating to Tuberville's campaign. But he wants you to be mad at your granddaughter or your grandson for literally no reason. This week it's young folks. Next week it's going to be immigrants. The next, the gays, and on it goes. All the while, folks like him get millions of dollars to literally do nothing.
Yeah, I haven't checked the number of bills he's put up, but I don't know if he's quite living up to those millions of dollars he's making off stocks right now.
I would not think so. I wouldn't think so. Ben, it looks like we've got a caller. Can we bring them on the air?
All right, give me just a moment.
Appreciate you calling in, caller. And this really, I think, as you can tell, ruffled my feathers.
All right,
as they say.
Pull this caller in, see if we can get to.
Yep.
Hello, you are live.
Yeah, thanks for taking my call. I was just going to add that Tuberville also deferred this to the prison strike. Did you see that in there, guys, with his rebuttal to what happened?
I did not.
He said, yes, you should do the WBRC, their little article of what he said. He continues after what you guys have talked about, saying Democrats want to let rapists and murderers have a work strike type stuff. And I was just going to bring that to your attention because I thought that was also him deferring and saying things that were not exactly correct just to make what he was wanting to be his point.
Right.
And that was what I was wanting to.
And I appreciate it. And this is Charles, right? From Athens,
yes,
is that right?
It is.
It's good to hear from
Morgan
you.
County, yes.
From
sir.
Morgan County, yeah. It's good to hear from you again. And that's what that's what these politicians do. I mean, they just I don't know. It's amazing, and it's amazing. And the thing about this prison strike thing that I can't understand is that people like Tuberville and people like other talk radio hosts, they know that these people, most of these people, 95, 97% of these people are going to be back out. They're going to be back out on the street. Right. And so the idea that you're going to take the time to ridicule these prisoners for trying to make their conditions better rather than rather than saying, okay, look, here's a good time to advocate that our politicians actually do something. It's bizarre. It's anti-public safety, is what it is. It's anti-public safety. They want to be law and order and they want to be tough on crime and all this. And well, if you really want to make the public safe, you really want to make people safe, you have to make prisons an actual, we can talk about the degree to which they can be punitive or not, but you have to make them rehabilitative for the people that are going to come out. And the fact of the matter is, our prisons are not.
Well, no, we do nothing, and our parole rate is so low that it is in an extreme. I think it's only 11% get parole now that they changed. I don't know if you knew it, but the legislature created a bill that made it a whole different way of selecting the parole board members. And a whole lot more. Charles Graddick is still in charge, but he had to go further in letting victims know that someone was out, and so a whole lot of postponing got done then. But guys, I've got a letter going to the federal district court. Should arrive on Monday. That's to assist the mentally severely mentally challenged that are in the prisons and have been in isolation, some of them for years, seeking habeas corpus relief, a means to give them a means of seeking relief because of their mental impairments are so severe they couldn't even write a letter.
Mm.
And so that'll be happening on Monday and throughout next week. A lot of stuff's coming up that no one realizes to be able to help the situation. So wanted to let you know that.
That sounds great, and I appreciate it. And I appreciate, I mean, the people that do the work to help prisoners, to help people when they are at their lowest point in life, to try to come back and to try to treat them with some sort of humanity. I think that the folks like that, public defenders, people that, I think that it's important that we have a right to an attorney in this country, something that's in the Constitution, and things like people, defending the worst people. I think that folks that do work like that are really undervalued in society, and so I appreciate you doing that for those folks, man.
Well, I thank you for. I'm doing it because it's the right thing to do,
Mm-hmm.
and in any way you look at it, to do the right thing and to have empathy is a very important thing that we don't need to lose as a society. It speaks volumes about us if we do not have empathy. I thank you for taking my call.
Yep. Thanks, Charles. Appreciate the call.
Thank you.
Yeah, that was. I mean, I don't. Nothing else really to say about that. That's a good call. Appreciate it, and update us on that later. We're gonna go really quick, and we're gonna play this. We're gonna play this clip from Adam, where he talks about some. He pre-recorded this segment last week talking about some issues with the municipal retiree bonuses. So we're going to play that. We're going to take a break, and then we'll be right back. So Ben, play that clip for us.
All right, folks, Adam Keller here, and I wanted to talk a little bit about local government retirees. Every month, the Retirement Systems of Alabama sends out its newsletter called the RSA Advisor to all of its members. I appreciate that the head of the RSA, Dr. David Bronner, frequently uses his platform to advocate for common sense ways to make Alabama better, from repeatedly urging the expansion of Medicaid to highlighting the extraordinarily low property tax rates in the state. No doubt, this is just one of the many reasons why Dr. Bronner inspires such jealousy and disdain among certain circles of the ALGOP. This month, he chose to name and shame some local governments who did not follow suit with the state and grant bonuses to their retirees. And folks, I'm definitely here for this naming and shaming. From the October Advisor, quote, recognizing the strain that inflation was putting on retirees, the Alabama legislature granted bonuses to all retired public education employees and state employees, which were paid in April. The legislature also authorized the almost 800 local government employers who have retirees, including cities, counties, boards, and commissions that participate in the RSA, to provide these same bonuses to their retirees. Of those, 475 local employers accepted this opportunity to help their retirees by authorizing these bonuses. These bonuses will be paid in October. Unfortunately, just over 300 local employers declined to provide this additional benefit to their retirees. Close quote. Now, before we go on, I want to add that these bonuses are incredibly modest. We're talking, a couple $100 in most cases. Education and state retirees have gone well over a decade without a true COLA or cost of living adjustment. Dr. Bronner is resistant to any kind of unfunded COLA, which I believe is the responsible position for him to have. But of course, the supermajority controlling Alabama's government is resistant to almost any kind of new tax revenue that could fund a COLA. And many of the GOP legislators have been dismissive of even the merit of a COLA separate from any funding concerns. In other words, they would be opposed to giving state and education retirees a COLA, even if there was plenty of money lying around to pay for it. They argue that since they are privileged to have a defined benefit pension, they know exactly how much their retirement will be for the rest of their lives, and they shouldn't expect it to go up. Of course, That's easier said than done for the retirees across Alabama facing rising cost of living and declining purchasing power. Public education and government retirees dedicated years of their life and their labor to our society and our state, and I don't think it's asking too much that we honor their contribution and ensure they can retire in dignity. All that to say, I think this retiree bonus falls far short of what these retired workers deserve. But it is a step in the right direction, so credit to everyone involved for making it happen. I hope that you can build on this foundation and keep moving forward. And credit to the local governments who made the choice to do the right thing and pay this bonus to their local retirees. Shame on those who chose not to. Going back to the October Advisor, quote, some of the reasons that have been given actually show the ignorance of a few local leaders in ignoring the public employees who work daily to bring the local unit to its current status, close quote. Bronner praises Huntsville Mayor Tommy Battle, but calls him out for opposing the retiree bonuses, having had to be overruled by his city council. Moving south, quote, the mayor of Orange Beach opposed the bonus, saying RSA is a casino betting the house's money. Obviously, the mayor does not understand how defined benefit pension systems work, nor does he understand that the public employee's bonus only cost a mere one-time total of $35,692 for Orange Beach. And these are the people who made Orange Beach a great destination. The mayor is operating in a fog. The RSA owned Raycom from 1996 to 2018 and had 12% of viewers in the United States. Raycom merged with Gray Media and now broadcasts to about 34% of viewers across the country. During all this time, the RSA has used tens of millions of dollars in ad time that advertised and supported all the businesses of our beautiful beaches. The RSA has supported Orange Beach, and Orange Beach should support RSA's retirees. Close quote. Bronner was obviously not amused with the mayor of Orange Beach's ignorant remark. Next, again from the October RSA Advisor, quote, a leader in Decatur opposed the bonuses for their retirees, which would have cost the city $252,030, because he did not want to fund something for a specific group, but preferred to spend public funds on things that benefit all citizens. When asked about his support for a splash pad and who benefited from that, he said that retirees could take their grandchildren there. That is unbelievable. And let me add, for the mayor of Decatur, maybe retirees could afford to take their grandkids to the splash pad you built if the city had done the right thing and honored these bonuses. That money would have gone straight back into the local economy, and they should know that. Closing out from the RSA Advisor, quote, the RSA manages and invests the funds for local employers and then uses these funds to pay the retirement obligations of local employers. The RSA cannot decide on its own to provide additional benefits to retirees. Only after legislation can the local employers make that decision pursuant to the law. We are happy that most retirees have received or will receive a bonus this year. We regret that some of our participants did not receive a bonus because their former employers chose to fund other projects or interests while ignoring inflation's effect on longtime citizens that gave years of dedicated service to their local agency or government. Remember that when these local politicians want your vote. Close quote. And amen, Dr. Bronner. The retirees deserve better.
Hometown Action is a grassroots organization building a multiracial working class movement for racial, gender, economic, and environmental justice in Alabama's rural communities. We stand in solidarity with Alabama workers and are proud to support the Valley Labor Report's efforts to inform and build the Southern worker movement. Please visit hometownaction.org and follow our social media channels at Hometown Action to learn more about how you too can get involved to make the South a better place for all workers. Solidarity, y'all.
IBW 558 is like a great football team. You've got to have the aptitude, skills, and knowledge to outperform the competition. If you're a non-union electrician, now is the perfect time to get off the sideline and join our team. We have the absolute best wages and benefit package in North Alabama and Southern Tennessee. It's because our team stands together, bargains together, and our families benefit from it. With immediate openings, you have the opportunity to see why the IBEW is the right choice.
Energy Alabama is a locally operated and membership-based nonprofit organization focused on advancing Alabama's clean energy future through education and advocacy. Many people in charge of infrastructure and building decisions simply don't know about how viable clean and renewable energy is. To that end, Energy Alabama has provided instruction to more than thousands of adults and tens of thousands of K-12 students across the state. We're working hard to build careers in clean energy and help everyday Alabamians save money on their utility bills. Learn more about our work and how you can join us at energyalabama.org.
Support for the Valley Labor Report comes from the International Federation of Professional and Technical Engineers Union. Learn more by visiting www.ifpte.org.
The attorneys at Maples, Tucker & Jacobs have stood with the working people of Alabama for over 40 years, providing skilled legal representation for your workplace injury claims. When you are injured on the job, it can be a scary time. The attorneys at Maples, Tucker & Jacobs have the experience to guide you through the process to make sure that you and your family are properly taken care of and your rights are protected. If you need help, call the attorneys at Maples, Tucker & Jacobs at 855-617-9333 or visit online at www.mtnj.com. No representation is made that the quality of legal services provided is greater than the quality of legal services provided by other law firms.
Support for this program comes from the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, Local 136 out of Central Alabama. Learn more at ibew136.org.
Attention union members, membership organizations, podcasters, or anyone with a payment processing need. The future is here, and your organization needs to be prepared by working with Unionly. With Unionly, your union or organization can take payments on a mobile device, eliminating processing fees, giving you a better price than other payment processing methods, while at the same time supporting a union-friendly business with a specialized skill set to meet your needs. Your members will thank you when they pay their dues at their convenience without waiting in line to deposit cash or check. Start preparing for the future today by calling 206-595-8631 or visiting unionly.io.
Are you looking for a better future, a career that can have you set for life, and to be a part of something that's bigger than yourself? If you are, then consider a skilled trades apprenticeship with the International Union of Painters and Allied Trades. The work of IUPAT is all around us, from the industrial painters who work on the bridges to drywall finishers, floor coverers, the glazers who install the glass in our skylines, and so much more. With an IUPAT apprenticeship, you earn while you learn and receive benefits while learning the trade, including a pension. We provide world-class education free of charge. That's right, no student debt. Our starting salaries for apprentices that graduate is above the national median salary with benefits for entire families. And you have the flexibility to take your trade wherever you'd like in the country to work. IUPAT District Council 77 covers our entire region, so give Adam Booth a call at 205-603-3142 for more information. Again, that phone number is 205-603-3142. Come build a better future with us today and join IUPAT.
Come on, you poor workers, good news to you I'll tell, how the good old union has come in here to dwell.
Labor creates all wealth should go to labor, and you are listening to the Valley Labor Report. My name is Jacob Morrison. My co-host is Adam Keller, but he is out today. He's in Houston, Texas. Sitting in for him is Ben Job. Say hi to the people, Ben.
What's up, y'all?
Appreciate you joining me. Appreciate you taking the time. If you've got anything to add, you can get where Charles was on the other side of that break earlier and give us a call or send us a text. The phone number is 844-899-TVLR. That is 844-899-8857. We got a text message from the phone line from Zach from Oklahoma. He says Oklahoma Teamsters contract proposal meetings are done, and Local 886 is preparing for victory in 23. We love to hear that, Zach. I appreciate it. We have a very, very vigorous discussion in the YouTube chat going on today. Mostly around that conversation that I was having about Tuberville. And so Username Bama Slayton says, why don't you just say that Auburn has a long history of paying coaches to quit? It says a lot about state leadership and Auburn boosters instead of driving politics. Then I think he said, and then he just says, or she, I don't know, tools. So I think that I'm being called a tool there. And I don't really feel like I am the one driving politics here by responding to Tuberville's quote. I don't think that I'm the one driving divisions. I think that Tuberville is the one by creating this false narrative, about lazy young people and dividing people up by age and totally unnecessarily. I think he's the one dividing us up. He's the one driving politics. He's the one playing these partisan political games. I'm only bringing facts to the discussion, reading you Bureau of Labor statistics about what's going on, and explaining to you and reading off public information about pay scales from Amazon and all these other companies. And you know, so I think that what I'm doing is uniting working class people with the truth. With the truth, which is that politicians like Tuberville, bosses that donate to his campaign, want to screw you over. They want to screw you over. That's their whole thing. And this is a union talk radio show. We have never, as a program, endorsed a candidate or gone out and said to vote for this or that person, but we have talked, and I actually have a segment prepared that I'm going to be talking about a Democrat in just a second. Okay? So, you know, whatever, your vote individually is like less important to me, but I think it's important to understand who these people are and what they're doing and what they're saying and when they're lying to you.
And we do have a caller on the line.
All right, great.
You want to take one?
Yeah. And you know, so that's all that I don't think that I'm the one driving politics here. I think Tuberville is the one creating divisions, and I am combating that. That's my opinion.
And I would say, like, every time I hear a piece of news or even an advertisement or something, just see if it's a rich person telling you to be mad at a broke person.
Yeah.
Because their whole game is like, as long as they're pissed at other broke people without power, then everything's going to move smoothly.
Exactly.
But fellow workers aren't your enemy. They're never going to, they can't even, like, give you the stuff you want if you wanted stuff out of life. Like, your fellow workers, like, you can get it together, but when you're apart, when you're trying to fight with fellow people of working class, you're just like, you can't get the wealth through that. You know what I mean? Even if you're just after the wealth.
Exactly. Yeah, so let's bring the caller on the air. Ben, caller, what is your name and where are you calling from?
And you were live.
Hey, what's going on? It's Infinite Content from Philly.
Hey, Infinite Content from Philly is a prolific YouTube chatter. Appreciate you calling in. What's up?
How y'all doing today? First off,
I'm doing good.
Courteous.
Doing good, brother.
Okay, so what some people don't understand with this whole Tuberville thing is exactly what you all are explaining. It's class division. The bosses and the oligarchs, they want the class to fight amongst itself so that we don't get together and, you know, defenestrate them. And I know that's a big fancy term from one of these Yankees, but defenestrate just means throw them out a window. And that's what probably needs to happen with some of the powers that be. But we are not mad at the workers. We are mad at Tuberville for trying to play the workers against each other. Am I correct?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Like, I mean, quite frankly, I'm disappointed that Alabama fans actually let some from Auburn take office.
I was surprised. I was like, he ain't going to win.
How'd y'all do that?
He's over.
How'd y'all let that happen? But,
I don't know.
No, my sports views aside, I'm like,
right.
If rich people are telling poor people like, "Oh, you all are working hard enough," that means that you all they're just trying to exploit us.
Quiet quitting. That's it.
Exactly.
That's the most amazing. I don't even understand who came up with quiet quitting.
Right. Yeah, and you're.
Quiet
quitting.
It's just we've been doing
quiet
that for
quitting,
years.
and the definition of quiet quitting is like I'm just gonna do my job. I'm not gonna give you free labor. I'm not gonna do things outside of my job description or work over for no money. That's what quiet quitting is. It's just doing your job.
It's like I'm not going above beyond if you're going to be behind with my work. If you're going to be behind and below with your pay.
It's crazy. And then so Bama Slayton replied, said, but you're not going to go to the root cause of the premise that Tuberville got paid at the end of the contract. I mean, look, obviously getting paid.
That's boosters thing. That's beyond. That's not. That's outside the scope.
Sure. All I'm saying is that it is just as a preface to the conversation about how he is dividing us up. He is dividing working class people up and telling us to believe that there's this group of working class people that are really lazy and they're takers and stuff. It's interesting that he is somebody that got $5 million to quit. I just think that's an interesting thing to understand. But the much bigger thing is obviously that he's dividing working class people up and trying to pit us against each other for no real, there's nothing there. There's no there with the
there is that workers are locking horns with each other instead of uniting and locking horns against management.
Exactly.
Anyway, I've taken up enough of y'all's time. Thanks for hearing me out. Y'all have a good one.
Appreciate it, brother. Thanks for the call.
Thanks for calling in.
So, hey, here's a reminder just before we go into our next story, because this is really important. This came across my feed by virtue of co-host Adam Keller, who, despite not being an educator anymore, not being an educator by trade any longer, he is still very much has connections in that community. He has a passion for it. And he showed me that the deadline for nominations for elections to leadership of the Alabama Education Association is on Monday, October 31st. Monday, 3 days from now. 2 days from now. I don't know how you would. The Alabama Education Association is the largest association of educators in the state of Alabama, though they also incredibly confusingly represent principals and superintendents. Nonetheless, NEA affiliates can be better and they can be worse, and it's the decision of the members what path the organization takes. I think that the AEA is particularly top-heavy. It is particularly driven by the people at the top, maybe more so than some other NEA affiliates. But there are mechanisms to change that. And it's up to the members whether or not they want to make use of the levers that they have in their association. They don't even like to be called a union, right? The AEA doesn't. But we always talk about how the union is just the workers, and that's true. Workers get to elect who represents them in their union or their association, as the AEA likes to say. Workers get to elect who represents them in their union, and their leadership is only as powerful as their members. So these elections are going to be very important for educators, children, and parents as we gear up for a fight against school privatizers in the next quadrennium. School privatizers who want to suck public money out of public schools and drive them into the hands of wealthy private school CEOs. It really is a shame that there's not more awareness of the AEA elections that are coming up. I can't believe I just found out about that yesterday when Adam sent it to me. But I guess that's the world we live in. So if you're an educator and you're listening to me and you want schools to be better, you're an educator and you want your working conditions to be better, you want your children's learning conditions to be better. If you're an educator in Alabama, you're listening to this, consider running for office in the AEA, in the Alabama Education Association. They're such a weak union. They don't even want to be called a union. They could definitely use a shot in the arm. So, again, if you're an educator in Alabama, elections for office in the AEA are coming up, and nominations close. Nominations close on Monday, October 31st. So if you don't nominate yourself or somebody else by October 31st, not going to be able to do it. So to do that, log into your AEA account, myaea.org, to learn more, nominate yourself, nominate somebody else, all that good stuff. I think it's very important, very, very important. Let's go ahead and take a break, and then we'll get to this. Then we'll get to this Hyundai story on the other side of this break. So let's go to a break. We'll be right back. You're listening to the Valley Labor Report.
Energy Alabama supports consumers and is a leader in advocating for them. We have been able to successfully fight off utility rate increases in the state, reduce fees for electric vehicles, increase electric vehicle infrastructure spending, and secured a $100 million refund by Alabama Power after the utility overcharged customers for fuel. To learn more about our work advocating for customers and join the fight, go to energyalabama.org.
There's a lot of talk about a shortage of workers, but that's not the case with IBW 558. We have provided our customers over 3,000 workers and performed over 3 million man-hours in a pandemic year. With 8,000 OJT hours, 900 classroom hours, OSHA 30, and a state license, our members receive the equivalent of a master's degree. That's what makes IBW 558 the right choice for your electrical needs. Look us up at Facebook or at IBW558.org.
North Alabama DSA is looking for folks to work for a better North Alabama. They prioritize mutual aid, municipal activism, and union solidarity. Contact them on social media or dsanorthalabama@gmail for more information.
Support for this program is provided by the International Association for Machinists and Aerospace Workers, Local Lodge 44 in Decatur, Alabama. Learn more at iamaw44.org.
Hometown Action is a grassroots organization building a multiracial working class movement for racial, gender, economic, and environmental justice in Alabama's rural communities. We stand in solidarity with Alabama workers and are proud to support the Valley Labor Report's efforts to inform and build the Southern worker movement. Please visit hometownaction.org and follow our social media channels at Hometown Action to learn more about how you too can get involved to make the South a better place for all workers. Solidarity, y'all.
Support for this program also comes from the Iron Workers, Local 477. So if you are looking for contractors with lower than average EMR and TRIR, they tell me that if you need to know what those mean, then you will. Or if you need to supplement a workforce at any level for any amount of time, short or long term, if you need iron workers that come trained and certified at no extra cost, or if you need workers from superintendent down to general laborer, and you're looking to start work on a project, or you're unhappy with your current contractor situation, you need to call my friend Jeb Miles with the Iron Workers Local 477. They only work with the best in the business, vetted contractors, and can do all kinds of jobs, from roofing to steel and bridge erection, from welding to heavy rigging, from structural repairs to machinery alignment, and much more. They supply manpower on 4 of the 5 largest projects in North Alabama, so you know they're legit. If you need good quality, safe, efficient, diligent, and knowledgeable workers on your job, then you need the Iron Workers Local 477. Call Jeb Miles at 256-383-3334 or via email at local477@bellsouth.net, and make sure you tell them that you heard about them on the Valley Labor Report.
We're the nurses, firefighters, and claims representatives that help keep our government services running. We respond to natural disasters. We care for our nation's veterans, and we investigate discrimination in the workplace. We are federal and D.C. government workers, and we are proud to serve the American people. Working in more than 70 agencies across the government, we know we can fulfill our mission because our union has our back. Learn more at afge.org. Paid for by the American Federation of Government Employees, AFL-CIO.
Support for this program also comes from the Mid-South Council of Retail, Wholesale, and Department Store Union. Learn more at rwdsu.info.
Come on, you poor workers, good news to you I'll tell, how the good old union has come in here to dwell.
Morrison. My co-host is Adam Keller, but he is in Houston, Texas this week, so Ben Joe is in the studio.
Hey, y'all. Hey, y'all.
Appreciate you helping us out, Ben. It's always nice to have you helping us out and allowing us to use this space. This is a really great space that we've got here, I think. So.
Oh, thank you. I'm happy to be here.
All right. So if you've got anything to add, you can send us a text. Not going to be able to take any more phone calls in the main show today, but you can send us a text, 844-899-TVLR. We might read it, but I got to get through these next two stories before we go into overtime. We can take some more calls in overtime, though, if people want to keep calling in. So let's dig into some more of these recent updates about child labor in Alabama. From Reuters, who originally broke the story about children working in manufacturing facilities with OSHA violations for amputation hazards back in July. From Reuters, in an interview before a Reuters event in Detroit on Wednesday, Munoz said Hyundai intends to, quote, sever relations with the two Alabama supplier plants under scrutiny for deploying underage labor, quote, as soon as possible, unquote. Jose Munoz is the company's global chief operating officer. And so that is the big recent news, is that Hyundai is going to be cutting relations with these two plants that have been going through this scandal about child labor here in Alabama. And, you know, what this is doing is not taking accountability. It's not an attempt to rectify mistakes or to make amends to the community that they have damaged, and that they've damaged purposely, in my view, right? I mean, Dale Jackson even said, when I spoke to him about this situation on his radio program, the whole reason that companies like Hyundai use these third-party labor providers, the whole reason that they subcontract out this work in the first place is specifically to skirt labor law. You're not stupid, I'm not stupid, they're not stupid. We know that's why they used them in the first place, and now that their supplier has gotten caught doing exactly what they were brought into Hyundai's supply chain to do, Hyundai is now cutting them loose. And of course, look, obviously no tears are going to be shed by me for the executives of these suppliers. Like I said to Dale on his show, I reckon these people ought to be arrested. I do. I reckon if we're going to be throwing people in jail for missing fines for a traffic ticket, or any number of, or you know, sleeping on a park bench or something, if we're going to be putting poor people in jail for things like this, executives of companies that put 12-year-olds in manufacturing facilities with OSHA violations for amputation hazards, they should absolutely be going to jail for child endangerment. Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay? So no tears are going to be shed by me for these executives. But these executives are not the ones that are going to be hurt by this. They're not the ones relying on this job for a paycheck to provide for their families, right? They're going to have a nice parachute. They're going to have a real soft landing at some other company exploiting some other worker. That's what's going to happen for the executives of SL Alabama and Smart Alabama, these suppliers for Hyundai. They're going to have a real soft landing. It's not going to hurt them, not going to punish them. Not going to hurt and not going to punish the people responsible. This will hurt the workers that came forward with abuses of management. That's who that's going to hurt. And that's exactly what the United Auto Workers are saying. In a press release from the United Auto Workers, they say, quote, by abandoning these workers, the company, which has received millions of dollars in subsidies, has effectively walked away from a problem without any regard to the consequences of their actions. And just to illustrate that point about the subsidies really quick, this is from the American Prospect in a piece about this situation last week. In the past, Alabama has given Hyundai, the state of Alabama, has given Hyundai hundreds of millions of dollars in subsidies. It lured the company to locate in Montgomery with a $252.8 million incentive package in 2002 and another $59 million in inducements in 2018. So we're looking at just from those two subsidies, $250 million from the taxpayers of Alabama, from these workers.
I can't believe Gen Z would do that.
Right. Yeah. $250 million from people like these workers who are now going to be out of a job, who pay taxes. In that piece for the Prospect, Lee Harris interviewed the Southern Regional Director for the UAW, and he expanded on that criticism of Hyundai. He said, quote, you know what happens to be in that supplier plant? Local Alabamians who pay taxes to the state. You're paying taxes to your state, and your state has given Hyundai money and incentives, but when your employer uses child labor, the CEO's solution to stop that is I cut you out of a job. That's insane. That's insane. Instead of walking away, here is the UAW's proposed solution, and a solution that I think makes sense. From their press release again, quote, the people of Alabama deserve quality, family-sustaining union jobs in auto. Jobs they can depend on, UAW Region 8 Director Mitchell Smith said. We call on Hyundai's Global Chief Operating Officer, Jose Munoz, to rescind his decision to cut ties with their suppliers and instead come to Alabama, meet with auto workers and the community, and agree to improve working conditions for the U.S. workers who make Hyundai vehicles. I think that would be the right move. And in addition to that, instead of severing ties with these suppliers or allowing them to stay third party, Hyundai should just take over operations of these plants, have it all in one supply chain, so that they are responsible for the things that come out of this plant. And this does seem to be part of the solution that Hyundai is rolling out, though, who knows how sincere that is. But this is from Munoz's interview with Reuters. He said, Hyundai is pushing to stop using third-party labor suppliers and oversee hiring directly. In addition, Munoz told Reuters he had ordered a broader investigation into Hyundai's entire network of U.S. auto parts suppliers for potential labor law violations and to, quote, ensure compliance. And so, that sounds good. But we'll see how much of that is just BS and how much of that they actually follow up on. That's just one of these issues with these non-union manufacturers, right? There's just so little accountability that these companies have to anybody, to the community, to the workers, or even the consumers. But Hyundai has a clear incentive, a clear and timely incentive to try to BS their way out of this scandal, to just post through it, as folks on Twitter might say. From the American Prospect piece again, quote, the Korean car giant is currently asking the Biden administration to loosen the rules on a consumer tax credit for electric vehicles, which was recently enhanced in August's Inflation Reduction Act. That now requires the IRA now requires qualifying cars to be assembled in North America. If Hyundai could get the IRA provisions delayed until its U.S. factories are up and running in 2025, it would help the company compete in the roaring new market for electric vehicles. So there's a huge incentive. They've got this huge, there's just this enormous hundreds of millions of dollars ask here that Hyundai has before the president of the United States, basically. And so there's all the reason in the world for them to say all sorts of pretty sounding things. But how much incentive is there going to be for them to follow through on it, especially if the Biden administration caves? In the same press release that I mentioned earlier, the UAW said that they called on the Biden administration not to give in to these requests from Hyundai. From that UAW press release, quote, the UAW is also calling on the Biden administration to ensure that Hyundai Motors does not receive any subsidies, loans, or other support from U.S. taxpayers until the company commits to work with the community to remedy workplace problems, agrees to a monitoring mechanism, and establishes high-road workplace practices that will benefit workers and the communities in which they reside. Hyundai is lobbying to loosen the rules on the consumer tax credit that requires autos to be made in America. Quote from UAW President Ray Curry, President Biden has said that transition to a green economy must result in quality jobs for American workers, and we could not agree more. Hyundai's use of child labor in their U.S. supply chain should immediately disqualify them from taxpayer subsidies. And as far as I'm concerned, obviously, right? Obviously. What's the other? What would even be the other option there? What would be the justification to continue giving them taxpayer subsidies while they're using child labor? Bonkers. It's bonkers. Absolutely bonkers. And so, we'll see what happens. Obviously, we are going to keep following this story. That supplier out of Montgomery has still not faced any fines or penalties or anything like that. But I have a feeling that they will, given what happened to the supplier outside of Mobile, face some real penalties there. So we're going to keep following this, and we'll keep you updated. And the last story, it looks like the last story that I'm going to be able to get to is this about what's going on in Tennessee. But here's some good news to lead into the next story, and it's relevant. Business Insider did an article on a recent study from Cornell showing that union members make $1.3 million more than non-union counterparts over their lifetime. So if you want to earn $1 million more over your life, then join a union. From the article, workers without college degrees particularly benefited from career-long union membership. In fact, a worker without a college degree who has been in a union for 100% of his career is actually expected to make more than a non-union worker with a college degree. And I can attest, I can attest to that. I know. Yeah, I'm a union worker with a college degree, and I know, union workers without college degrees who make more than, pretty significantly more than I do. David Story being one of them, not having a college degree, making a lot more than I do. So
no debt, come on,
and no debt. Hey. Exactly. IU Pat. We got a few of them sponsoring the show. You should reach out to them. We got the phone numbers and the email addresses. Call them. If you're just getting out of high school, seriously, if you're just getting out of high school in the area, you're listening to me, and you're like, I don't know what I want to do with my life. College is like weird. I don't know if I want to go to college.
Don't want to pay for college.
Don't want to pay for college. Can't pay for college. Seriously, consider going into the trades. And if you're going to go into the trades, get into a trade union apprenticeship program. Get into a trade union apprenticeship program. You can go back and listen to the ads on our live stream or on our podcast, or if you just want to talk to me directly, feel free to message the show. We're on Facebook, Twitter, all those places, and the DMs are open. So send us a message, and we'll get you in touch with a local trade union. That's what we're all about here. So yeah, that's some pretty good news. $1.3 million more than non-union counterparts over their lifetime. And with that, we're going to wrap up the main show today talking about this push to get right to work in the Tennessee state constitution. That's just a little bit north of the state border, but we're in the Tennessee Valley, and I think that actually our FM frequencies actually go up into Tennessee a little bit, and I know that we've got some folks listening online from Tennessee. And they are there is a push in Tennessee to get, quote, right to work, which I think is more accurately called right to rec, put into the state constitution. This is being pushed by, of course, politicians and bosses. And it really is amazing because they've got a website. And you mentioned this earlier, and it's funny that you said this Ben, because they've got a website. What is it? Right to work TN. I'm not sure if I can find the site really. TNrighttowork.com. Yeah, here it is. And they've got this. If I was them, I wouldn't have put this on my website, honestly, because it's like, if you're looking at this and you are not anything except put off, like, I don't know what to do for you. I mean, I don't know, because they've got this list on their website of leadership of this campaign. There's this campaign to put right to work in the Tennessee state constitution, and it's like an official thing, And so they've got this leadership for the campaign.
Oh no.
And it's literally all bosses and politicians. Governor Bill Lee, Governor Bill Haslam, Marsha Blackburn, Bill Haggerty, Bob Pitts with the Associated Builders and Contractors, which is a non-union construction contracting organization. Kent Starwalt, the Tennessee Road Builders Association. Hospitality Tennessee. This is a hospitality, employers association.
Let's say it sounds like a temp agency or something.
Yeah. Rob Eichard, the Tennessee Grocers and Convenience Store Association. Like, yeah, I love taking advice from grocery store bosses. That sounds fantastic to me. I mean, that's all it is. And it's just this, like 100 different state representatives and state senators and all these, and that's it. That's it. It's one thing, right, to have, okay, there's this campaign that we're pushing, and incidentally, here's this politician that endorses it. Maybe even here's this boss that endorses it if they're a community leader or something. I don't know. I don't know that I would put that on there, but maybe, let's say, incidentally. But also, I have this group of workers. I also have this church. I also have this community organization. Something like that, mixing it up a little bit, right? One thing to have politicians and bosses in a list. It's a totally another thing to have a list of people pushing your policy, and it is only politicians and bosses. Only politicians and bosses.
Where are the workers at?
Red flags.
Right to work.
Red flags should be going off. Sirens. You should not be able to think straight for all the sirens going off in your head when you see a list like that. You should not be able to think straight. And, it's a good rule of thumb. It's a good rule of thumb. If you see a ballot measure or a policy or something that the only people that are listed on the campaign's website as supporting it are politicians and bosses, it's going to be bad for workers. It's going to be bad for workers. That's just a fact of the matter, basically. And so they're pushing to get right to work in the state constitution. It's already law in Tennessee. It's already law in Tennessee, so it's not going to actually change anything about the way that employment is structured. It's just going to make it more difficult to repeal if the citizens of Tennessee change their mind. If the citizens of Tennessee change their mind about this pro-boss policy, the people that are in power right now want to make it more difficult for them to do that. And so that's what this is about, putting right to work in the state constitution. And so really quickly, just a reminder, what is right to work? I want to remind everybody what right to work is, because so many people have no idea. So many people have no idea. I had Yaffe on the program. It's been months ago now. But part of the conversation veered into right to work, and it was clear he had no idea what it was. He had zero idea what it was. He thought right to work meant that you could be fired for whatever reason. You could be fired for any reason or no reason at all, which is the case in Alabama. You can be fired for any reason or no reason at all, unless that firing is federally illegal. You know, there are some federal protections that you have on your employment. Those are anti-discrimination laws, and you have ostensibly, you have a right to form a union. Ostensibly, right? And so these are things that even in Alabama, you can't fire somebody for. But what that's referring to, you can be fired for any reason or no reason at all. That's what's called at-will employment. And that's every state in the union is an at-will state, basically, except for one or two. One or two states have just cause laws that you have to, your boss has to have some reason to fire you. It can't just be because he woke up on the wrong side of the bed. But here in Alabama, your boss can just wake up on the wrong side of the bed and he can fire you. And I don't know, people like Yaffe think that's good. I don't. But that's the case in virtually every state in the union. What right to work is right to work is a law that comes in between the employer and the workers, because when you have a union, you collectively bargain a contract. And so you go kind of article by article, line by line, and you write the terms and condition of your employment together, and then it becomes a legally binding contract that the boss can't break and you can't break. Okay? What right to work does is it comes into those negotiations and says, you cannot have this specific clause in your contract. You cannot voluntarily agree to this specific clause in your contract. That clause being that if you want to work here, you've got to pay representation fees to the union. And that is the only time that conservative small business people want to impose restrictions on what kind of terms and conditions of employment a boss can impose on their workers and workers can agree to. You want to work in unsafe conditions? Conservatives say fine. Your boss wants to make sure that you have a car to work there? Conservatives say fine. Boss wants to make sure you wear a uniform? You've got to go out and buy your own uniform? Conservatives say fine. But if bosses and workers want to say that, okay, we agree that to work here, you've got to pay representation fees to the union, which is going to help workers, which is going to benefit workers by making their union stronger, you can't do that. That's what right to work is, and that's why bosses and politicians want right to work, is because it hurts unions, it makes it more difficult for us to organize, because it decreases our funds, because we have to support free riders in the same workplace, right? You're able to get all of the benefits of union membership, and we legally, you can't, we have to support that. And I don't think that's good. I don't think it's good that we have to support free riders. I don't think that it's good that workers and bosses can't agree to have that clause in their contract. That's what right to work is. That's why it's bad. We're going to continue the conversation in overtime. All power to the workers.
Workers, good news to you, I'll tell. How they good old
Oh, hold on. I had you muted too.
Oh,
Sorry,
okay.
y'all.
Sorry about that.
Sorry, y'all.
Yeah, well, so we're off the radio now. We're off the radio. We're online only. This is the second half of the program. And we've got some good stuff. We have Chuck Cora, actually, from the Apodlacha podcast, coming on to talk about J.D. Vance. That's going to be fun, I think. I've got some other stories that we're going to get to. Going to talk about Wendell Major. He's a Democrat cop running for attorney general, which Democrats want me to get excited about, I guess. I don't know.
Get excited.
So we're going to be talking about some of that on the other side of this break. So yeah, we'll take this break really quick, and we'll be right back with Overtime. All right, folks?
And we'll grab that caller on the other side.
Yep.
Be back here shortly.
Come on, you poor workers, good news to you I'll tell, how the good old union has come in here to dwell.
folks, we are back and we are in overtime. Second half of the program that is online only, but it's still free. Don't have to pay for it. Although if you would like to support the show and help us continue doing stuff like that, then please do. You can go to tvlr.fm/donate if you would just like to make a donation, or you can go to tvlr.fm/store if you would like to get something in return for your money. We've got stickers and hats. And at some point we're going to have another short order. But yeah, so we got a lot of good conversation in the chat. And we appreciate that. We appreciate Strom Infinite Content coming in. Adam, absolutely happy to spend some time on those AEA elections. It's incredibly important, really underemphasized. And you know, I mean, I think you and I both know that the AEA or that the leadership of the AEA are some of the people that want it underemphasized. So
interesting method.
Yeah, right. Yeah. I'm going to keep my members as inactive as possible. That's going to give us lots of power.
Kind of like Alabama voters in the
right. Yeah, Jeb in the chat said, so Bama says increased taxes drive increased bureaucracy. The correlation in benefits never track along with increase in taxes. They're actually reduced. I don't think that's true. And Jeb counters that with the wage gap we're experiencing today literally started when Reagan cut corporate taxes and started breaking unions. And that is absolutely factually true. Factually true. Bama Slayton responds, I completely disagree. You can use education as a shining example, especially in lower income communities. The solidification of the family unit has more impact on education than dollars spent. And I think he's disagreeing to Infinite Content, saying increased taxes allow for increased social services, education, public works, infrastructure, and that's true as well. But what Jeb said about unions is incredibly important. I mean, it's almost 1-to-1 as far as union membership goes down 1 percentage point, CEO income increases 2 percentage points, and wages stay flat. I mean, it's seriously, the correlation is ridiculous. The correlation is ridiculous.
Why would a boss give you more money?
Right.
They're capitalists.
Strom says at-will employment an awful related problem. It is, and it's everywhere. It is everywhere, and we need to get rid of it. We should not, at-will employment should not be the law of the land. Absolutely not. Yeah, so let's, do we still have the caller on the line?
We do.
Yeah, let's bring them in. Caller, what is your name and where are you calling from?
How you doing, guys? My name is Joey Leach. I'm an organizer for the Security Police Fight Professionals of America, Local 603. I want to give a shout-out to all my brothers and sisters in the labor movement. I'm an organizer in Central Florida, and yeah, it's not an easy thing to do to organize in the South.
Absolutely.
Believe me.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
you said you're with the Firefighters Union down there?
Security Police Fight Professionals of America. We organize all first responders, from correctional officers to firefighters to mostly security officers.
Gotcha.
We had a recent claim to fame would be our officers were the ones who were being shot at the Mandalay Bay casino shooting back in 2017. So we're on the front lines. A lot of issues out there, but I'd like to talk about the mainstream unions, the AFL unions, the large federations. They got to break into the piggy banks and stop paying guys to do internal organizing in the right-to-work states, and also do just straight organizing new shops. It's got to be done. They got to loosen up the purse strings to put the organizers up in motels to get them to make sure they hit the streets to get our numbers up. It's especially in the Deep South. It's the only way we're going to make it. We got to get our numbers up in the service industries. We got to educate the young. We need to get more union tradesmen and more union organizers inside the high schools, inside the colleges, to talk to the guys about the benefits of working under a CBA. And we got to change the climate. We got to change the culture in the country, even if it's just little by little. to where they're in favor of collective bargaining and workers organizing, because it's the only way we're going to save ourselves. It's the only way millennials and Gen Zers are going to be able to pull themselves up. Because you look at so many these days, the millennials, they got no money. They can't buy houses. They're not buying big-ticket items. It's the older generation, the generations who worked under a union-strong country. Now that you look at how union density's plummeted, and the middle class is going with it, and the guys, there's no upward mobility for the young. There's only just outstanding debt and empty promises. So I'd encourage everybody to, the young guys out there, to get into apprenticeships and to tell the unions, the higher-ups of the major federations, the CLCs, the labor councils, to get the people inside the high schools, inside the colleges, and let them know, let the young know about the value of collective bargaining. And thank you all for what you guys do running the program.
Well, just one moment, because I have a question for you. But
Sure.
that's something that we have that I think is incredibly important, and is something that we're going to be working on with the Labor Council up here. Is trying to get organizers in schools at career fairs. And I mean, I think, frankly, anytime there's like a military recruiter, there ought to be a union recruiter.
That's exactly what I was going to say earlier. It was
right
like, I
next to
remember a
them.
lot of recruiters at my high school, but no
like, you
union
don't have
peeps.
to, you don't have to, like, volunteer to go, like, kill poor children overseas, to get a good.
Damn right, I completely agree. Yeah, where there's ever a military recruiter, we need union recruiters as well to pull them into the trades. I mean, look at the huge shortage we have these days of plumbers, welders, carpenters. I mean, there's just none around because it's been shunned for so many decades. Kids were encouraged to spend all their money in college debt, to go into extreme debt, spend all their money on college, and to come out with degrees that would only land them in the service industry at most. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
So you got a vicious cycle. You got a vicious cycle.
Yeah, and so I'm interested. The question that I have is kind of unrelated, but you said you're with the SPFPA, and
right.
The I think probably if you've listened to the show, a reasonable amount of time, you know that, like, we're pretty leery of cops, and I think for good reason, right? So.
Right.
I guess I'm interested. I wonder why it is that cops seem so willing to, because law enforcement is an incredibly unionized industry. They have high union density, and they're totally willing to stab us in the back whenever we go on strike. Look in Brookwood, they've got cops who are presumably members of the FOP. I don't know, but maybe they are, maybe they aren't. Giving coal miners tickets for going the speed limit in front of a scab escort because you're not pulling over for an emergency vehicle. Like, it's not an emergency to take scabs to work, and
exactly.
And they're down in Cottonton, Alabama. They are they're being rented by the company, and manning the picket lines. and so I can, like, so yeah, why is it you think that there is not more solidarity among these people who they've got collective bargaining agreements, whether or not we want to call it a union or not, I don't know. I also forgot to mention that I agree. I totally agree about the gotta dig into the purse strings and all that, and we've talked about that with Chris Boner about his his report, and he did a follow-up to that, and we're going to be getting him on the show to talk about that at some point, I'm sure. But yeah, so why is that, you think? Because that's always confused me and made me incredibly angry.
That's right. If you look at the PBA, which is the Police Benevolent Association, the Fraternal Order of Police, and other organizations, the police unions, it appears that they're screwing themselves in the long run by not showing solidarity with their fellow brothers and sisters, and even opting to drop out of federations and larger police and larger union movements, which I think is insane. I think it goes back to the whole culture of America, where the solidarity, the concept of solidarity and the concept of community, all that has been so eroded. Everybody's just about, I'm going to get yours and the hell with everybody else. So to go into an industry like law enforcement, the their first instinct is to protect themselves, and they're not thinking about the guys who are on the picket line, such as the Cisco Teamsters who were arrested. Yeah, there was over a dozen, about 20 of them arrested for beating back scabs. Now, I have my personal feelings, along with the guys in my local and without my union, that we would never work picket line. We would never defend scabs. None of the guys in my union. We wouldn't do that. But yeah, other unions like the FOP, PBA, it does make me wonder. And I believe it's a culture that says that it's of individuality. That's just crushing the labor movement in America as a whole. You know, we don't want to do things. We don't want to work together. We don't want to work as a team. We just have this extreme individuality. That reflects in the way that the NLRB has been looking into cases and making rulings, to where in the beginning it was protecting and encouraging collective bargaining, to where it was protecting small units, to where nowadays it's protecting, and I quote, the rights of the individual worker. So I really think it goes into the whole culture as a whole. And if you look back at history, like the Mate One, the story of Mate One and the miners, you actually have the police, the constables, and the police there who supported the miners and fought the company scabs and the company goons back on the side of the miners.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Sid,
you know,
I think his name
was
it Sid Hatfield? Sid Hatfield.
Right, I believe that's his name. I believe that's what his name was.
Yeah. That's always been a fascinating story about Sid Hatfield. And you know, this fascinating call.
Yeah.
And
that's
well,
I
and
think
it's just
if we
and
just
then
change
even
the culture as a whole. I mean, when you look at the percentage of unionized workers, we're talking 10, 11%, the whole workforce, and then you look at the private sector, it's 6.5%, so some ridiculously low number like that. So you got this whole culture that's just across almost the whole country, every industry, of where solidarity is being eroded, and the obsession of individuality is just killing us all as a whole. And that really reflects inside the FOP, PBA, and you see that.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean, the FOP,
so we got to go ahead.
The national FOP president, he's been on local talk radio here defending a convicted murderer. There's a cop here in Alabama, in Huntsville, that was convicted of murder, and like by, you know, a jury of his peers, by a right-wing DA, prosecuted by a right-wing Republican DA, right? You know, so this isn't some, you know, Democrat DA going out on a limb. This is a right-wing Republican DA prosecuting a murderer, somebody who a jury of his peers found to be a murderer. And what happened? There was a suicidal fella who had like a flare gun to his head or something. And there were these other two cops that were in there, and they were like, you know, trying to talk him down basically, but he still had the gun to his head, but it was obvious that he was not like a threat to them. He was a threat to himself. And this guy comes charging in there with a shotgun, says, put the gun, you know, hollering orders, yelling orders, and in 10 seconds he blows the guy's brains out. And so, you know, he was convicted of murder.
No restraint. They just went in to shoot like cowboys.
Yeah. And so he was convicted of murder, and the police chief, the mayor of the city of Huntsville, and the national, they have a national, the national president of the Fraternal Order of Police was on local talk radio defending this guy. And so, like, it's difficult. It's difficult for me to, like, I would love to see more people like that Sid Hatfield guy, right, that were siding with the miners. But, you know, it's really hard for, you know, I don't know. I'm just very, very distrustful of cops, and they're, you know, I mean, does that make sense? And what is the role of maybe cop associations in making that not the case, and like trying to fight back against that culture of, you know, defending murderers?
Right. Yeah. What they need to do is the Fraternal Order of Police, police level association. They need to continue to work with the AFL-CIO, with the Central Labor Councils, and they definitely need to stop the withdrawal from the larger federations, and they need to reach out to the community through the federations, through political organizations, through labor's allies such as the NAACP, and other organizations who have been longtime labor allies and sit down and solve the community problems that way. I'm a big supporter, a big longtime reader of labor notes, big supporter of them. And there was a lot of articles that. Okay, can you hear me good? I had to transfer over to my car, the call here.
Oh, no, you're fine. Yeah, I can hear you.
Oh, good. So there was a labor notes article before about how the Seattle Police Department was pulling out of the Federation, and the Federation was dead set against that because that would have been a great way for the cops to really be able to communicate with the community in the best way. So it was, so that's got to be discouraged. So basically, the reform, it's got to come from the people. It has to come from the larger labor movement, larger federations, other unions. They have to come together and pull the FOP and PBA, keep them within the labor movement and let them know that these are the issues of the community and they have to be solved this way and they have to be given leeway. Because, it's like, if you look at some examples such as the Correctional Officers Union out in Illinois. When the Teachers Union went on strike there some years ago, it was the correctional officers there who gave them some big donations, really kept them afloat, the Teachers Unions over there, yeah. So we do have that sense of solidarity, but we need more actions like that. We need more actions like that. And also, I mean, look at it this way. You even have prisoners forming unions in the last couple of decades.
Right.
So I think even with right. So even if prisoners being able to form their own unions, that's a way that they can have positive and productive dialogue with prison officials, with prison officer unions. I even think there's potential for that. So the more people that we have organizing tenant unions and rank and file solidarity unions, we practice minority unionism. As long as we push all forms of radical unionism to across every industry, whether it's security, law enforcement, firefighter, manufacturing, tech, everything, service, we can really turn things around and come together as a whole, come together as one country like we did in decades past. We can fight common enemies, which is the big corporations who are exploiting all the workers across the board. I mean, if you look at, there's things that Florida has done in Central Florida where they've taken away police officers' overtime and taxed them on overtime for other issues, and it's crazy. So, I mean, for law enforcement officers to side with corporations, they're siding with the enemy and against the communities who actually, in the end, support them and actually do pay their salaries. It's not the corporations, it's the people's taxes who take care of them. So I do believe that if we increase militarism from the inside and just keep up the good fight, if more guys did what you do, keep the radio in the Deep South, have radio shows, do more outlets, things like that, would be stronger. Also, if I could say one more quickly, I'd like to see the AFL-CIO and some of these major unions, even the Teamsters, move some of their headquarters from, say, Washington, D.C. or New York City to Mobile, Alabama or Charlotte, North Carolina. Hire the locals to work in their offices, sponsor Little League games, sponsor football games, and I think that would be a good way to reach in the heart of Southerners.
Right.
So, brother, I'd just like to sign off by saying good solidarity to all of you, to all of my brothers and sisters in the labor movement. And thank you, Valley Labor Report, for all you do for the labor movement and spreading the word of militant unionism, because that's what we need in this country. It's the only way we're going to survive.
Joey, thanks for the call.
Thank you.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Thank you, brother. Solidarity.
All right. So I've got. I'm gonna hit another story really quick, and then we'll bring on. We will bring on Chuck Cora from the APOD Lacho podcast. But yeah, that was a fascinating call. Half don't know what to make of that. But I appreciate him listening. And I appreciate. I mean, it'd be great to have. I think it'd be a whole lot better if we had more cops thought like that. So, here's another Alabama labor story that is. It's going to break your heart. It's going to break your heart. GE workers in Auburn who filed their petition to unionize with the IUE-CWA last month withdrew their petition last week, meaning they will not be moving forward with an election at that plant. AL.com says it's the second time in 5 years that workers have withdrawn a union petition at the Auburn facility. This comes after 2 workers were fired, at least 2, minimum 2 workers were fired for their union support, one of whom was pregnant. They filed unfair labor practice charges with the NLRB for illegal retaliation. They have to rely on federal protections because, like I said, Alabama does not have any protections like that. They don't have any protections for pregnant workers. Democrat State Representative Neil Rafferty attempted to get a Pregnant Workers Fairness Act passed last year, and it was shot down by the Republican committee, who ostensibly care about women and pregnant people and fetuses. But like Adam said, they care about bosses more. This withdrawal of the petition also comes after the mayors of Auburn and Opelika wrote an op-ed in a local paper opposing the unionization effort with some of the most tired nonsense tropes about unions. And it's so bad that I wanted to share some of it with you. In their joint letter, they say that they reckon workers are not often unionized today because they, quote, realize that companies they work for pay fairly and treat their employees with respect.
Oh, that's so cute.
Oh man. That is pretty wild. Remember earlier we spoke about CEO to worker pay ratios. According to GE's public records, GE is the company that these workers were trying to unionize at, their CEO to worker pay ratio in 2020 was 1,357 to 1.
Efficiency.
Yeah. Remember also that they just fired a pregnant woman because of her opinion. At this GE plant in Auburn, they fired a pregnant woman because of her opinion, because she supported unionization. Where are the free speech warriors? Where are the defenders of parents? Where are the defenders of mothers? They're nowhere to be found here because of course it's all theater. It's all theater, and it's all theater in service of the boss. Of course, workers are not paid fairly. We're barely scraping by while our betters, who, let's remember, barely even take the time to be in the same room, hell, even the same state as us. We're barely scraping by while our betters make out like bandits off of the value that we create. Of course, most workers aren't treated with respect. They're treated like a number, at best. And they preface all of this with, I believe. I believe this is the case. I believe this to be the case. And this, I think, with the rest of the article and how out of touch it is, just really makes me think that they did not talk to a single worker in this plant about their feelings before running their op-eds. But of course, why would somebody like them talk to one of the little people, right? Why would a mayor of Auburn, why would the mayor want to talk to just a measly worker? They end the op-ed by saying, quote, "It would be a shame for a union to try to dictate how the company operates in this ultra-competitive environment." And I want folks listening to understand that this statement is laced with contempt for you. This statement is laced with disgust for normal people. Because what are they saying here? They're saying that it would be bad for the people doing the work, which is who the union would be, right? If they formed one there, the people doing the work would be who the union is made up of. It would be a shame for the people doing the work to have a say. It would be a shame. They want you to put your head down. They don't want you to talk back. Just do what you're told, accept the lashes. The important people in New York and D.C. and in Montgomery, they know better than you backwards hicks, so just do what you're told and run along. I mean, that's what they're saying here explicitly. That's explicitly what they're saying here. And so they got what they want for now. But hopefully at some time in the future, these folks are going to be able to find the courage to fight back. Because I think that they deserve a say. I do think that they ought to have some control over the place where they spend the majority of their waking lives. I don't think that would be a shame, actually. I don't actually think it would be a shame if people had some amount of say over where they spend the majority of their waking lives. I think that would be the bare minimum. But fancy boys like Ron Anders and Gary Fuller, the mayors of Opelika and Auburn, Alabama, they think that would be a shame. And that's who they are. We've got, have we got Chuck in the Zoom?
We sure do. I'm just framing him up right now.
Then we will bring him on here in just a second. But yeah, Strom says they keep no surplus value for their non-employee shareholders. Right, yeah. The workers don't want respect, better conditions, or better wages, right? Of course not. Of course not. It's astounding. It's absolutely, it's just really, really gross. This article that came out. Couldn't stand it. So yeah,
right.
We've got Chuck Cora on the Zoom. Chuck, can you hear me?
I can, Jake. Can you hear me?
I can. You sound great, Chuck. Chuck Cora is one of the co-hosts of the A Podlatcha podcast. So Chuck, I appreciate you taking the time to talk to us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Happy to be here. Been a fan for a long time, so glad to be joining y'all.
Yeah, and same for you. Y'all are doing some great work up there, a little north of us in Appalachia. And so we brought you on today to talk about J.D. Vance. But before that, I wanted to talk a little bit more about y'all's podcast and you know when y'all got started and what made y'all want to do that. Has it always been you and Callie doing it?
So actually, it started out with me and a gentleman named John Eisner, not the tennis player, an old friend from growing up in West Virginia who started the show with me in December 2019. And he was with us up to about April of this past year, and he left the show to pursue some other professional endeavors. So Callie's been with us ever since April of this year.
Gotcha. And I think I see John Eisner on Twitter sometimes.
Yeah, he's still on there. He actually works as a public defender in our hometown of Parkersburg, West Virginia.
That's awesome. Yeah, I was just telling a caller earlier in the show that public defenders are incredibly undervalued, and I'm sure he'd have some stories there. Is he AFSCME?
I don't know if he is or not. It's a good question.
I guess probably West Virginia, probably not. They may not have a union there. I don't know.
Yeah, it's hard to tell with them. It's a weird state when it comes to that. I'll have to ask him though and see.
Might be worth asking. But yeah, that's incredible work. I value public defenders an incredible amount. So that's really cool of him to do that. So what made y'all want to start the podcast?
Yeah, so we kind of felt like media that didn't have a, I guess, hard conservative bias was kind of lacking in the region, and I think just the representation of other views and really pushing back against some of the deeply ingrained stereotypes about Appalachia wasn't really happening, at least on a level that we felt we could be a part of. And John, before we started the podcast, he ran for elected office for a House of Delegates seat in West Virginia in a deep red part of the state. It was probably like a Trump plus 40-something district, and he did better than any other Democrat had ever done in that district. When he ran, he still lost, but made some real inroads. And the conversations that we had on that campaign, because I helped him out a lot, were ones that we wanted to continue having, and we wanted there to be some sort of progressive voice for Appalachia, which we felt like was lacking at the time. And so we started a podcast without like a lot of real goals or planning in mind. We just wanted to bring a more progressive viewpoint about Appalachia to more people, and also be building a platform to lift other important voices up that had otherwise not really gained the attention that I feel like they deserved. And that's really served as the impetus for it. And we started out with a small audience in 2019, and throughout the past 2.5-3 years, I've built a pretty decent sized audience, talking about things like JD Vance, but other important things like, what's happening in Appalachia, the economy, the important people, especially the creative community and the working class community in Appalachia that often gets ignored in the national media, but has such an important role. And honestly, when you think about working class history, an extremely important role in the history of union organizing in the United States.
Absolutely, and I think that I think that y'all do a good job of that. I saw your interview with Doug Jones the other day because it came across my feed. I thought that was pretty cool, and I've seen y'all talk to some other progressive Southern electeds, and I think that getting some of those messages out there is important because the South is not all a monolith. Adam was talking to Zach Hyden last week, and the perception of Alabama is such a red state, supermajority Trump voters, and if you actually look at who voted, only something like 30-something% of Alabama, of the eligible voters in Alabama, voted for Donald Trump. So that means more people voted for nobody than voted for Donald Trump, and also, way more people voted for nobody plus Joe Biden than Donald Trump. And that's something that you don't really get that perception from popular narratives about the South or the popular portrayal of the South in the media.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. There's some nuance involved there, and it's like, it's important to toe a line of not being an apologist for the real problems that are happening in the South and Appalachia, while also acknowledging there's problems like that everywhere. There's racism everywhere. It's not just in the South. There are plenty of parts of California and New York that also experience that too. Mm-hmm. And I think that one of the biggest goals that I've had on the show is really trying to encourage people to think a little bit more open-mindedly about places. Alabama, West Virginia, the geography is arbitrary, right? I mean, there are lines that are drawn by politics or by geography, but the people inside those states, I think oftentimes feel underrepresented. We've talked to many people from Alabama who are sick and tired of just hearing this whole notion of like, oh my God, I can't believe you live in Alabama. How do you survive with all these Trump people and all this stuff? And it's like the narrative that you're hearing about a place is only a small sliver of the truth of what it actually is, And I think for a lot of people, for a lot of progressives that live in those places, they're really sick and tired of these narratives being controlling about a place that they love and care about and call home. And yeah, it's complicated, and the politics of places are oftentimes not what we want them to be, but that disregards the real people that live there and the real progressive people that are trying to fight for a better place. And I think that one thing we've tried to do is really emphasize that and say, like, of course, West Virginia has a very, very red electorate, but that's not representative of all the people as a whole. And it's important to acknowledge that nuance. And like you said about Alabama, I mean, the way a state votes, if the only thing you know about a state is what color they show up on the electoral college map every 4 years, then you know nothing about that state.
Right. I could not agree more. Could not agree more. And so, I think that's a good segue into or it's a good stopping point for that part of the conversation, and good place to pick up on talking about JD Vance. And so I'll just give you, I know I have not done any deep dives into JD Vance, and I saw y'all's video about top 5 worst things about Hillbilly Elegy, and I was like, oh, this would be fun to have him on. And I have never read Hillbilly. Did you actually read Hillbilly Elegy for that video?
Yeah, I've read it. I bought the Kindle version because it was the cheapest version that I could buy. But I wanted to be able to actually read it so I could speak credibly about it. So yeah, I've read the whole thing and annotated it, sadly.
Oh my goodness, annotated it. Oof. Well, so talk to us then about where does JD Vance come from, and why did he become kind of the hillbilly whisperer for a short time for Democrats in New York and in California?
A great question. So his book was published, I want to say it was in 2016 or 2017. It was either right before or right after the presidential election that year. So he's from, I think it's Middletown, Ohio, which is a small working class community just outside of Appalachia. I think it's like north of Cincinnati, I want to say. But he grew up and spent a lot of time down in Jackson, Kentucky, living, I believe, with his grandparents. And that's where a lot of the narrative part of Hillbilly Elegy comes from. And I think it's important to acknowledge like his personal story is relevant. It's one that's like, it's an inspiring story of someone who came from very troubled household and made something of himself, I guess you could say. Anyway, he went to college, overcame some adversity, all that stuff. He certainly had help. But if you isolate the story as that's one thing. But the problem I think that's missed with Hillbilly Elegy is that a large portion, probably over half of the book, is really like a political tome and narrative that he constructs about where he's from based on his individualized anecdotal experiences, and uses them to cast generalizations about the entire region of Appalachia and many parts of rural America in general. He often uses one-off examples of where he's seen people abuse the welfare system as a reason for making that an indictment of the entire system and the people that use it. He had one isolated experience using a payday loan and thought that it was a very positive experience for him. So he has praised them and put them up on a pedestal when we know that they disproportionately affect poor and minority communities, and they're designed to be a debt trap, of course. And so I think like the way that he slipped into this sort of the hillbilly whisperer, if you will, I think. Now, I'm not like totally informed on all of this. I'm sure that he had some connections high up, but it came at a time when people were trying to figure out what the heck happened with the 2016 election, when everybody thought that Hillary Clinton was going to win and Donald Trump ended up winning. And they viewed J.D. Vance, they viewed Hillbilly Elegy as the answer to that, and as this working class retribution for elites, coastal elites, so to speak. But he did that also while trashing all the people that he grew up with. In the book, he makes it very clear that he resents where he's from, which I find it really ironic that now he's trying to run to represent all of Ohio, even though he spent the majority of his life after college living in places like Washington, D.C. and San Francisco. So he's really a chameleon of a person. And I think what he lays out in Hillbilly Elegy is, I think, what he truly believes. He truly believes that people benefiting or people utilizing the welfare system are leeches on the system, and that none of them are hardworking individuals and they're lazy. That's his words, not mine. Wow. When, as we know, statistically and anecdotally, it's often the opposite of that. So that's his worldview, and he has morphed himself into this sort of pro-Trump MAGA person, even though he kind of made a name for himself by being not that. After the 2016 election, up until the time that he decided to run for office, and it was politically advantageous of him to support Donald Trump. So, he's somebody who is willing to sacrifice all of his dignity and values to get elected, and will be the person that he thinks the electorate wants him to be in order to get to that point. And let's make it clear, the only reason he won the primary is because he got Donald Trump's endorsement. That was going to be Josh Mandel 100%, but he sucked up to the king, and the king made him kiss the ring, and in return he gave him his endorsement, while also claiming, quote unquote, that JD Vance kisses his ass. And that's a kind way of putting it. I think he does a lot more than that, but I will digress.
Yeah, I think that the chameleonness of his political character is incredibly evident, and the polls are tightening. Didn't for a while Tim Ryan had a lead in Ohio, and now Vance is taking the lead back? Or am I maybe mixing up Pennsylvania?
I think both Pennsylvania and Ohio are kind of going in that direction. Ohio's been tight pretty much the whole time. Tim Ryan has kind of been jostling back and forth with JD Vance for leads in the polls, although it's hard to really. It's really hard to gain a read on these races. I viewed all of them as given the environment that we're in right now in the midterms. I view all of these as leaning towards Republican. That means Dr. Oz in Pennsylvania, Herschel Walker in Georgia, and JD Vance, unfortunately, in Ohio. Tim Ryan has made that a race, though. It should never have been this close. Ohio is a much more Republican voting state than that. And I think it's a testament to the campaign that Tim Ryan has run, but it's also a testament to how bad of a candidate JD Vance is. And I think, people are starting to see that. The other thing to point out in that race is there's a ton of outside money supporting JD Vance and very, very little supporting Tim Ryan. Tim Ryan's been a great grassroots fundraiser. JD Vance is not, but the amount of outside super PAC and i.e. independent expenditure spending in that race is heavily, heavily favoring the Republican.
Right. And so did you see that More Perfect Union story about Vance not commenting on the Kroger strike or the potential Kroger strike in Ohio?
I think I caught a bit of that, but I didn't get to see all of it. But I guess it's not surprising considering how anti-union he is, but that's interesting.
Well, it is. It's almost surprising because it seems like it would just be so easy to, maybe not walk a picket line, but that's one of the things that always eludes me for these people that are trying to be, I'm a working class conservative. I'm a pro working class Republican, right? These people, why don't they just say good things about, why don't they just pretend a little bit to actually care? We've got 1,000 coal miners on strike here in Alabama, and I keep very close tabs on this, not a single Republican has said anything about it. It's just like, how does that happen?
And that tells you everything you need to know about this fake support for working class people. And I get it. Like, the Democratic Party nationally has completely dropped the ball. And
the Democratic Party locally, there's a Democratic activist, somebody who's active in the party that came to David the other day, the other day as in last week, and it was like, oh, I just found out about the coal miner strike. How can we help? And it's like, what?
It's been 570 days now or something like that.
How can you be an Alabama Politico, somebody who considers themselves remotely well-informed and remotely on the left?
You can track how many years that took for them to catch up there.
Like, that was just bonkers to me. So rightfully so, I think, David was pretty cynical, and it's like, well, maybe get back with me when you don't have an election you're trying to win, and we can talk. Right?
You're absolutely. Look, I was embarrassed that it took me a month to find out about the strike down in Brookwood. Brookwood or Brookwood? Bessemer was Amazon.
Yeah.
But
and you're not even from the state.
No. And that's to me, that makes me really sad for them. And it's just, it shows like there hasn't been any, because there's not a lot of financial gain for politicians, because, working class, they're not going to give up part of their hard-earned union paycheck to throw money at a campaign. Right. And so I think it's telling, that like support matters. It matters not just in election time. It matters, 570 some odd days ago, it mattered. And the fact that hardly anyone is standing up for the miners, but for all these, we're in a union renaissance in this country, like more than we probably in our collective lives have ever seen. And, the lack of support has been, to me, astounding, and it's a political layup in many situations. But that just, it's telling of people like JD Vance, they don't want to cozy up too much because they don't want to see themselves as being pro-union. And one of the easiest dunks that a Republican can make right now is dunking on the AFT or the local education unions with all the education strike that's going on right now.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Well, so then, what is your read then on the people that are going to be voting, you think, for JD Vance? Why?
Boy, if I need like 3 hours to unpack that. I think there's a lot of it that can be explained by partisan tribalism. Vote for the R, not the D. There's certainly some of that. There's not a lot of appeal to the guy otherwise. He he tries to flex MAGA credentials, but I don't think that he's got the credibility to back it up. Not like someone like Josh Mandel, who's the former treasurer of Ohio, that's kind of a perennial candidate. He doesn't have like the credentials of being in Ohio. He recently moved back from San Francisco and DC. So I don't understand the appeal other than the quintessential Republican who's going to support if I guess if you're someone who votes on issues like abortion and stuff like that, maybe that's a reason why you're voting for him. I don't know. This is the race out of all the other Senate races right now that I'm the most interested to see the result, because I feel like it could be a lot closer than people are anticipating. I feel like that Tim Ryan has a narrow path to victory, even in such a difficult state, just because of how bad of a candidate and just how fake of a person JD Vance is. But also, Tim Ryan has been running a really effective campaign in Ohio. Even in tough political environments, they'll elect a decent progressive every now and then. I mean, granted, 2018 was a good environment for Democrats, but Sherrod Brown won a victory there, statewide race, and he's won tough races for a long time. I'm a big fan of Sherrod Brown. He supported my dad when he was on strike back in 2006. He was the only politician to show up on the picket line back then, and I will never forget that.
Yeah,
it's a good question.
I definitely have a lot of respect for Sherrod Brown, and he calls in like once a month to Flash's show in Ohio, America's Workforce. Yeah, so I like hearing Sherrod Brown on Flash's show. But yeah, it's definitely. I mean, I think a lot of these Senate races are just kind of like the Republicans have really, really put up bizarre candidates. Yeah, like Dr. Oz in Pennsylvania, J.D. Vance in Ohio, Herschel Walker in Georgia, Kerry Lake in Arizona. Like, these are all lunatics. Like, just absolutely lunatics, right? And, I think that, ironically enough, I think that the strongest Republican candidate, maybe it's just because I know her and maybe there are others, but, like, Katie Britt is just like a normal Republican, it seems to me, right? And she's in Alabama. And it seems like if she was in any of these other states where Democrats were maybe having a bit harder of a time, she'd be walking away with it. Because she's like just a normal Republican. And she kind of does a little bit of a dance to, satisfy some MAGA stuff. But she's like, I don't know. She seems normal to me, more or less. Obviously a lizard person, but, of the normal variety.
Normal lizard person, right? Yeah. I've seen that. I mean, she used to be Richard Shelby's chief of staff or something. Yeah, and he seemed like he never quite leaned far into the whole MAGA election denying thing quite like a lot of the other ones did. I view him this is very similar to what happened in Tennessee. Bob Corker and Lamar Alexander were both Republican senators there. They both had the sort of I would say independent light streak, I suppose, of not fully embracing this whole MAGA turn of the party. And they both retired because they knew that they would probably not win re-election because of that. And now you have people like Marsha Blackburn and Bill Hagerty in there who are unhinged. But I think we're seeing a lot less of people like Katie Britt and a lot more people like Kerry Lake in Arizona who are election deniers and these anti-democratic candidates that people I don't think are really taking seriously how disruptive these people could be. Look in Pennsylvania, for example, Doug Mastriano, who's the Republican nominee for governor. Now, granted, he in the polls, and polls are what they are. He's been up by the Democrat has been up by double digits. So I don't think it's very likely that Doug Mastriano could win. But if that guy won, he's an election denier and he gets to appoint the Secretary of State. And Pennsylvania, one of the critical states like Arizona in presidential elections, could really spell trouble in 2 years if those people are elected. Kerry Lake, very similar situation. So it's very scary. And then you have people like Herschel Walker who will do exactly what Donald Trump tells them to do. People like J.D. Vance who will also do that. And Dr. Oz, who the heck knows, but probably the same. These are people that could all, vote to not certify an election. So all this stuff has broad-reaching implications past just the general stuff that a senator should do.
Yeah, definitely. Well, so Chuck, we'll leave you off with the question: what are just to point people to the video, the top 5 worst parts of Hillbilly Elegy, but tell us one of those, one of the worst parts of Hillbilly Elegy, and it's your choice which one you want to tell us about.
Oh man. Well, first of all, I said this was the hardest list that I had ever come up with because there could be literally like 500. I mentioned the payday loan part and that was one of the worst, just because I think it's just so devoid of fact and reason. But one of the worst, I think, is really just, I think about how he talks about the people that he grew up with that supposedly he cared about and that was supposedly his community. There's one quote, I think it's like in the beginning of the book, and he's talking about the people of Jackson, Kentucky. He said, quote, "The people are physically unhealthy and without government assistance, they lack treatment for the most basic problems. Most important, they're mean about it. They will hesitate to open their lives up to others for the simple reason that they don't wish to be judged." And there's so much to unpack with this, but he wonders why these people don't open their lives up to him. It's because he's sitting there and doing the exact same thing that they don't want to do, judging them, saying and he's writing this from the perspective of him as a kid. So he's walking around as a kid saying, "Oh, at least you're all physically unhealthy and on welfare. So screw them. And I'm not going to be like this." And it's just so much resentment and so much hatred towards people that are just like not of means and struggling to survive, and there's no like empathy with that at all. And I think that sets the tone for the entire book. And it's statements like that when people say, "Well, how could you not like this book?" I point to and say, "How could you read this and not want to throw this in the trash?"
Right. Well, I'm not going to read it, but I appreciate you doing the work for us, Chuck. Thank you.
I did it so others don't have to. Happy to do a public service.
That's right. Chuck Cora, the Podlatcha podcast. Where can people find you?
You can find us anywhere that podcasts can be found, on Apple, Spotify, all that stuff. You can follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, even though I don't really use Facebook that much, TikTok, all that stuff. And you can go to our website at podlatcha.com to also check that out as well. And we just appreciate your support. And also just appreciate being on this show. I love this. I love the program that you do. And I wish that your show would have existed way back when my dad was a union steel worker, because I know they could have used something like that.
Well, I appreciate it. I enjoy it, and I hope that it is of some service to union folk here in Alabama and in the South. So, Chuck, I appreciate your time. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks.
All right. We've got one more story, and then we will roll out of here. And we're coming up on the election, so we're kind of more electoral politics heavy on this show than. Are talking about politicians more on this show than others, and we'll probably do something similar on the next show. But of course we will. Of course we're still talking about workers, but we'll probably be less electoral politics heavy after the election. So believe it or not, Democrats do have some folks on the ballot here in Alabama, even though they have less folks on the ballot than the Libertarian Party. Which, yikes. That's
ouch.
The Libertarian Party of Alabama has more candidates on the ballot than the Democrats. Oof. But one of those candidates is Wendell Majors. He is a cop running for Attorney General against incumbent Republican Steve Marshall. Now, there are all sorts of things you could do as a Democrat running for Attorney General to contrast yourself with the Republican in popular ways. You could pledge not to prosecute abortions, not to prosecute nonviolent drug crime. You could pledge to get tough on the boss's crime spree that's been going on, with children working in factories in Alabama, people being killed in warehouses, bosses polluting the environment, all this sorts of stuff. There's no shortage, absolutely no shortage of powerful folks screwing over working people in our state that a properly motivated attorney general could do something about. Well, Wendell Majors, Democrat cop running for Alabama Attorney General, wants to spend public resources cracking down on electronic bingo.
Uh-oh.
And I'm not joking. That's like, he was on the Alabama Capitol Journal. That's like the Alabama political or Alabama Public Television weekly news show or something.
Every time I walk out the door, it's just electronic bingo wasteland out there. It's the biggest problem.
Biggest problem in my life.
It's the biggest problem I can think of facing Alabama right now.
When I think about Steve Marshall, the Republican Attorney General, the very first thing that comes to my mind is that he is not cracking down on casinos and electronic bingo.
Yeah.
And that's a bad thing. That's the first thing. And I'm sure that most of you listening are exactly the same way. We are tired of the scourge of electronic bingo in our state.
Dragging the state down.
Oh my God. I mean, and I just don't know, that's like the story.
You can kind of gauge a person by what their problems are, right? And
seriously,
this problem is the biggest challenge we got.
I mean, apparently we just finished solving all the other problems in Alabama, and I hadn't been aware of it. And so now we're on to the smaller stuff like electronic paint. I mean, I want to be fair to him because he does make some vague overtures to going after opioid manufacturers. I mean, that was super vague. He was not specific about that. And lowering the prioritization for marijuana enforcement. But man, like, why would you spend a single cent trying to stop folks from playing electronic bingo when there are so many other things that we could be doing? That need to be done. I don't. And why would you spend a single second of you're a Democrat running for Alabama Attorney General. You're going to lose by 30 points, and so every press stop that you make should just be devoted to hurting the Republican. That's it. It should just be devoted to hurting the Republican brand and defining yourself as somebody that is actually going to fight for working people. Defining yourself as defining your party as a mechanism for building power for working people. Obviously, that's not what the Democrats are doing, but that's ideally what they want to ideally, I think that's what a lot of the activists want the party to be. And so that's what the candidates should be doing. They should not be wasting a single second on saying that the Republican Attorney General is not prosecuting electronic bingo enough. It's just, I mean, it's so bizarre.
It reminds me of the Twitter problems that are facing the Alabama establishment.
And he doesn't have his Twitter account has not been tweeted from since he ran for Birmingham City Council in like 2017. I mean, these people, they're just not serious.
I was referring to, was it Steve?
It was Steve Marshall.
That was like,
he has this forum on the Alabama Attorney General's website.
If you're scared of Twitter, please hit this up, but don't worry about the child labor.
Yeah, if Twitter hurts your feelings, then report it to us, and we will. We're not going to be able to do anything about it because what could we do about it, right? But you can tell us all about it. We'll act like your therapist. We will be your therapist. Tell me where.
That's
where
mental
does it
health
hurt?
care, and that's right there.
There you go. Yeah,
wow.
Oh man. Yeah, the demon rats. Strom says. Yeah,
demon rats.
Yeah. Well, that's about it. I just wanted to tell you that because I figured you'd want to know that we finally got somebody fighting to get rid of the scourge of electronic bingo.
It's a new day. It's a new day.
We got it.
We're taking it.
Yeah, that's
taking
right.
it out.
Finally,
Alabama's on the rise, y'all.
Alabama's on the rise. South's gonna rise again as soon as we get rid of electronic bingo. Yeah. All right, folks. That's it for the show today. Make sure that if you haven't, you donate to the UMWA Strike Pantry. You can support the striking families at paypal.me/UMWA Strike Pantry. Leave us a voicemail at 844-899-TVLR. That is 844-899-8857. You can buy a hat or give us money on our website, tvlr.fm. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share, 5 stars, all of that good stuff.
Give us Yelp reviews, right?
Yelp reviews, all of it. Share, and all this stuff for the Valley Labor Report. All power to the workers.